Kalorama, a Recorded Books High Bridge imprint, presents The People versus Socialism, a 10-count indictment for crimes against humanity, by Stephen A. Smoot. Foreword by Congressman Alex X. Mooney. Read by Mike Chamberlain. Foreword. I have lived my entire life in the greatest country that ever existed. I am proud to be a citizen of the United States, a country that has done more for freedom all over the world than any other. As an elected member of the United States Congress, I devote each day to first and foremost fighting to protect freedoms that we hold dear and our natural rights provided by God. Though I am a lifelong American, the story of my fight begins in Cuba. There, a defining moment in my life took place decades before I was born. An evil revolutionary named Fidel Castro tricked the people of Cuba into supporting him. They believed that he would bring them the kind of freedom and prosperity that so many enjoyed in the United States. Of course, when he came to power, the world saw his evil for what it was. His thugs kicked off Castro's stranglehold on Cuba by executing hundreds with no due process of law. He ordered the imprisonment of thousands more. When my grandfather's Roman Catholic University of Villanueva stood up to protect its students against illegal demands, Castro shut it down. My grandfather, my mother, and many others ended up in prison for not knuckling under to bullies. Most importantly, once he had usurped the government and his thugs controlled every aspect of national life, Castro revealed the worst. He would establish a communist tyranny to terrorize over the people of Cuba. My family first lost their freedom to Castro, then the sugar mills that both sides of my family had carefully built up and maintained for years. Hundreds of thousands had to flee to safety in the United States, including many members of my family. Though my family has thrived in this incredible country, I have never forgotten how tenuous freedom can be. One of the greatest advocates and defenders of freedom the world has ever known, President Ronald Reagan, said that freedom is never more than one generation from extinction. We must never relax when it comes to fighting for our freedom against the greedy and destructive ideals of socialism. Unfortunately, the destruction of our enjoyment of liberty can happen here. Protecting our liberty has served as the prime reason why I sought elected office. We also fight against socialism and communism through education. Our schools and colleges sometimes miss or even ignore the historical record of these ideas. Communist systems, such as those under Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, and too many others, murdered tens of millions of people in the past century. Even now, our homegrown socialists continue to praise a system that has thrown the country into chaos and forced its people to starve. Until very recently, almost every American understood the value of our republic and the evils of collectivist economic systems like socialism and communism. Too many failed to understand what socialism even means. There is a dangerous ignorance about these systems. This book is not unique, and I am thankful for that. We need an army of writers who can explain the evils of both socialism and communism. Also, we must use the historical record, including the words of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and others, to help everyone understand that socialism and communism represent theft, destruction, and coercion, not fairness and equality. All we have to do is work to open the eyes of people who have been fooled so they can look at countries like Russia and Cuba as they really are, places of needless privation and suffering. This book specifically explains the origins of these ideals that date back to even before Marx. It includes the history of countries who suffered under socialism, as well as examples of individuals and families who endured it. More dangerous, a number of connecting themes run from the horrific and brutal radicalism of the French Revolution down through the writings of Karl Marx to the left in America today. American freedom is constantly under attack. A surprisingly large number of people who seek elected office are fully embracing socialism, while many others embrace socialist policies. Socialism and communism don't work. They subtract from personal freedom to add to that of government control. History demonstrates that government is a poor solver of problems even in a free society. How on earth can we trust big government to plan for us and solve all of our problems as the left wants? This book does not tell the entire tale of the evils brought to so many by socialism and communism. It does, however, prove the case of its evil, its abuse, and shameful neglect. America is the greatest country on earth. Socialism's ideals lie opposite to those laid out by the Founding Fathers. Thank my friend Stephen Smoot for his dedicated work on this topic. Congressman Alex X. Mooney. Introduction. When I was in high school, several of us were on an academic team that won 2 West Virginia state championships. One of those championships took us to Chicago, where we were crushed handily in a national tournament. Most of our team also played at least one sport, which explains why we were not as prepared as the other squads and why we lost so badly. That, however, is not the story. We had to wait for a connecting flight back to Charleston in Greenville, South Carolina, at about 1 o'clock in the morning. The entire airport was empty, save for one easily spotted soul. He had his back to us at first, but we recognized him instantly. The trademark frizzled gray and white tipped updo was the first sign that told us immediately who he was. The expensive bright white jacket with sequins on the back that spelled out "Only in America" confirmed it. Before us sat Don King, born in the Great Depression, son of a deceased steel worker, a man who had spent time in a maximum security prison only to see unrivaled success as a boxing promoter. He fought through a society that still looked down on him for any number of reasons to find success and fame. He sat alone with no entourage. Indeed, not one soul accompanied him to wherever he was headed. When we approached, his eyes lit up. 6 white kids from a small-town high school in the West Virginia farm country were excited to see him in the middle of a South Carolina spring night. In the few minutes before we had to get on our flight back home, we received autographs and heard him implore us to stay in school, follow our dreams, take advantage of every opportunity we can, and work hard. He didn't have to say much about why America was so special. His belief was emblazoned on his back for the world to see. Though at the time, Don King faced an avalanche of media backlash and dislike, he impressed us with his preaching on how to find success in America. He also impressed us because he didn't have to speak with us at all. He wanted to share his excitement with a bunch of random high school kids about following dreams and making the most of yourself. After years of working with foundations, elected officials, and others dedicated to preserving and promoting the American free market system, that impromptu lecture about opportunity made the most impact on me. Since America won its independence, most here and around the world define the country as a land of opportunity. Those with a good work ethic and sound judgment rarely fail to craft a comfortable life for themselves and their families through either solid employment or building their own business. Following the rules and working hard does not grant immunity, however, from bad luck or unfortunate circumstances, but those with a work ethic and entrepreneurial mindset will almost always rebound from what life throws at them. Following the rules, working hard, and making good choices in work, business, or one's personal life create the path to success, but often require discipline and perseverance. Too many, especially the young, yearn for an easier path requiring less effort and sacrifice. Someone else, somewhere, they reason, should provide an opportunity for them and advance them regardless of whether or not they prove themselves. An entitlement mentality emerges among those who have never learned character through adversity, who have never embraced challenges or even failure as a learning experience, and who look at the traditional path to success as a daunting impossibility rather than a step-by-step process. At the same time, the culture ratchets up its expectations and raises the standards for the definition of success. In past generations, most defined success as working one's way up into a solid job or developing a business, starting a family with a lifelong partner, and enjoying at least some of the rewards of one's work. Such goals, attainable for almost everyone, represented happiness for those willing to work for them, and who also felt gratitude toward God and those around them in their fulfillment. In the last few generations, this dynamic that guided goals and aspirations has imploded in the United States, especially among those seeing themselves as elite. Film and television programs and commercial advertising pushed a higher standard of material success onto a culture enjoying more wealth and opportunity in each succeeding generation. Where mere ownership of a reliable car in the 1950s and 60s represented success, now the culture insisted that one own a brand new car. Where ownership of a sturdily built home large enough for one's family in a good neighborhood showed fulfillment of aspiration, now one must own a house larger than needed in exclusive neighborhoods to achieve their aspirations. Worst of all, parents foisted these values on their children. A mythology developed that those who do not go to an exclusive and expensive university, private school, or even the right preschool program risk losing access to the elite definition of success. Children who ended up getting offers from the University of Delaware or Ohio State when they set their sights on Harvard and Yale felt all too well the burden of what their society and parents expected of them. They feel that they have failed to embark on what they always learned was the sure path to the American dream, even as they absorbed a perverse definition of what that dream actually means. In such an environment where parents, teachers, and the surrounding society preach the wrong values and define success so narrowly, one can understand why so many have turned their ears to hear the destructive siren song of socialism. They set their sights on an end run around the traditional and normal path to success, much like others who falsely see professional sports, the entertainment industry, or even the lottery as an easy way to avoid the work that success requires of most people who earn it. Note: professional sports and the entertainment industry do require more work for a longer period of time to actually earn success. They also rely on natural talent more than almost any other field. This gives these fields one of the highest risks of failure related to the time and effort required to master them. Those who see these as their path to success should always have a plan B and C. End note. When that end run fails to materialize, as it does for most people, they blame the system and scour their life story for possible injustices and biases against them, rather than picking themselves up, learning the right lessons, and working harder. Socialism seduces such individuals most easily. In their disappointment or even despair, they feel like the system has treated them unfairly while favoring others. Even some of their more successful contemporaries see the distance between their success and their friends' failures as evidence that something is wrong. Leaders of socialist and communist movements have often sprung from the upper middle or wealthier classes, their background of privilege providing their credentials, their own disappointment or guilt fueling their beliefs. In such favorable forums of first-world-style misery, socialism can take hold like a staph bacterium and spread accordingly. It promises to provide a comfortable landing spot with little effort for some and the assuaging of guilt for others. They then project that those economically less well off, even if still successful in their own eyes, need the help that socialism can allegedly provide. They fail to recognize that barriers to entry erected by fellow travelers in all levels of government only exacerbate the problem of restricted entry into certain fields. If the intended targets of their good intentions have no interest in being saved by government, their responses get written off as evil or ignorant. Simply holding such heretical opinions serves as an automatic disqualifier from even participating in the discussion. One of the purposes of this book lies in making the case that socialism's perverse influence extends much further than its destructive threat to economic prosperity and opportunities for all those willing and able to work for them. Socialism's record of rot even extends further than the death toll inflicted through massacres and the implosion of economies and societies it causes. Its roots grow best in a failure of culture. Even worse, it requires the undermining and destruction of an active, dynamic, and respectful interchange that generally characterizes a healthy civil society. Instead, it takes on the worst features of religion gone wrong, especially abuses of power, as well as intolerance and fear of competing, legitimate points of view. Socialism actively threatens the rights of the people, economic prosperity, civil society, and culture, and even life itself. Its crimes in the past and present have destroyed uncounted millions of lives, destroyed countries, and spread misery throughout the globe while retarding progress in the name of progressivism. American socialists often refer to Western European welfare state systems when confronted with the evils of their system in history. The problem with that reference is this: the American left does not want to merely expand social welfare programs. They seek to fundamentally eliminate the constitution-based republic as one of their primary political goals, while transforming how culture is created and appreciated. This places the U.S. left more in the traditions of Robespierre, Marx, and Lenin than Clement Attlee. Socialism deserves indictment as a destructive force in history. It ruins societies, destroys nations, subverts religion and the family, and uplifts only the connected regardless of merit. Scattered exceptions to its dismal record of failure only include small, closed societies where all participants agree to live in this way. This book will lay out an indictment against this aspiration-suffocating system. Notes: even voluntarily socialist societies, such as the Amana Commune, rarely hold together permanently. End note. Understanding requires needed background information. Readers committed to the left should read at their own risk because they will learn about the history and application of some of the main ideas in the book. Many defenders of the free market, the American Republic, and other essential values speak as if they have a common understanding and appreciation of concepts. They take for granted that most Americans automatically agree, at least in part, with ideals such as natural rights, positive historical developments such as the free market, and structures such as the Constitution. A generation ago, a writer could assume that. Today, no longer. Defenders of values now called conservative, but once referred to as classical liberalists, now face a generation that may have the lowest level of civics education of any generation in U.S. history. Understanding of the Constitution, the Republic, and the economy gave way to curriculums designed to challenge the ideals of America, rather than preparing the young to prosper within it. As a result, those working to explain the truth of socialism must go straight to syllogisms that explain the full case. Enthymemes that assume some shared knowledge or consensus will fall short of providing proper evidence. With this in mind, the first chapter will provide important background information. From history comes the story of how the free market emerged from European mercantilism, the American colonial experience, and other sources. It also demonstrates how socialism descended from murderous radicals and socially maladjusted intellectuals to emerge as the opiates of the guilty children of the rich and middle class, those who could not rise in the meritocracy, and others who truly struggled with, and, in some countries, faced bureaucratic or social barriers, and often both, to exit their condition. By the time that socialism's promises were exposed as lies, however, the poison plant seed had germinated and choked out other systems. Socialism undermines and destroys not only the promise of economic prosperity, but also civil society itself. In the first count of the Indictment, the book makes the case, using Václav Havel, other intellectuals, and stories from interviews conducted for this book, that socialism creates a chilling effect on culture. Since it cannot work without consensus, socialism and its backers aggressively attack opponents and demonize other systems of thought or economics. Individuals fear to express themselves freely, aware of the reality of reprisal against anyone opposing the approved line. The first 3 chapters focus on the very important, but not nearly often enough discussed, ways in which socialism degrades society, especially important civic institutions, religion, and the family. First, the chapters will provide examples of that degradation from Eastern European churches, outside of Poland, to many American institutions of higher learning today. The analysis of intellectuals such as Václav Havel, combined with stories from history and accounts from those who experienced it personally, will demonstrate how socialism attacks and breaks down institutions. Why do socialist regimes, from Stalin to student government, fear certain institutions? Socialism cannot work on a national scale without coerced consensus. Those who work to impose it need to build cohorts and alliances that not only push their case, but delegitimize, shame, and, when powerful enough, shun those who disagree. In the United States, socialists and other leftists pursue strategies and tactics very reminiscent of Puritans. Unlike most authoritarian regimes, those of the Puritans and of many socialists require not just outward adherence to the law, but agreement in thought as well as in deed. Enforced conformity and evidence of intellectual compliance helped to keep a person safe in a society that would strip one of status, employment, opportunity, and sometimes even property. Once socialism, like Puritanism before it, eliminates competing voices from other institutions, morally shaming most into compliance and shunning the rest, the individual has little power or recourse. They must stand alone in the face of organized authority with all of its fellow travelers. After explaining the disastrous impact on society, institutions, and individuals, the book will go into telling the story of socialism's actual record. What happened when it emerged in Europe, Asia, and Latin America? Socialism failed to deliver its promises here as well. A handful of socialist projects attempted in the United States to produce at best farce and at worst actual human tragedy. Even Franklin Roosevelt's hagiographer, Arthur Schlesinger, could not put a positive spin on Eleanor Roosevelt's planned towns. Her husband's Tennessee Valley Authority did much more than waste time and money. It pushed thousands off their lands during the height of the Great Depression. Even worse, the second largest single-payer healthcare system in the world, the U.S. Veterans Administration system, proves every year that socialist healthcare absolutely does not work. Accounts from the United Kingdom and elsewhere reaffirm that coverage for all means real coverage for none but those who can pay in cash. Socialism's failure in Eastern Europe provides lessons for why the system cannot succeed in any form. A study by Bartłomiej Kamiński of Poland in the 1970s and 80s shows that its failure goes well beyond poor execution of sound ideas and theory. Socialism's destructive effects on the economy stem from the stark reality of what happens when government controls resources. Economic decisions made for political reasons waste resources, capital, and human effort. While all governments do this to some extent, socialists often wish to out-Herod Herod, creating economic weakness to prove strength, or at least buy support. Another feature that should help this book stand out is the inclusion of personal accounts of individuals who have experienced socialism firsthand, or who have also witnessed its impact on family. Personal stories do not just add drama to the narrative. They help create the foundation for the argument against socialism and for the free market, natural rights, and other elements of what once was called classical liberalism. Personal accounts and observations, verified when possible by primary and secondary source research, give a powerful accounting of what happened to these countries and their institutions, families, and individuals. Individuals matter, as does the death of their freedoms, opportunities, aspirations, and their ability to live their lives without fear. Another side to the tale of socialism's crimes deserves a good telling, that of America. When people fled to freedom, they found their way to America. Opportunity, rule of law, and freedom beckoned them, even if some actually found the country more restrictive than their own pre-socialism societies. They came and served as educators, elected officials, business owners, and in other important positions. Escaping from socialism to rise in America helps to tell the stories of both socialism and freedom. The story of America as a land of opportunity should resonate from this book, and it serves as part of its inspiration. Modern critics wrongly decry the United States as too racist, too misogynist, and too intolerant, with a history that reeks of evil and oozes with prejudice of all kinds. Socialists bank on the notion that drilling hatred for America into young minds will render them more open to an essentially anti-American system. Those who compare the America of 100 years ago with our own perfect ideal will always find it wanting. History viewed fairly within the context of the times included in the assessment provides a clearer idea of who people were and what society looked like. Many who live in the modern age, particularly many of those still in college, relentlessly judge all by a standard only narrowly held even today. Too many cherry-pick details from the pasts of individuals, sections of the country, and the nation itself to paint a Sheolish version of America. Combining a poisonous dose of the bad with nary even a sprinkle of good makes the United States appear a place with no hope or respite from prejudice and hate. Fortunately, that does not represent the entire truth, and many stories from the time reflect that. From this era comes another important inspiration in the writing of this book, my great-grandfather's experience in coming to the United States. Too often we attack socialism as an enthymeme. If I only told about the evils of socialism and assumed that the audience understood the value of free markets, I would only win half of the battle. Academics and others on the left have relentlessly pushed the notion that some of America's truly bad qualities in this time, notably the rise in popularity of the Ku Klux Klan and pervasiveness of Jim Crow, made the U.S. a moral equal or inferior of the Soviet Union. The story of my great-grandfather and his family's success in America proves the left's blanket condemnation is a total lie. Advocates for the free market should not just demonstrate the evil of socialism without also sharing the story of what free market capitalism can do for anyone. My grandfather, Stefan Annis, brought his wife and children to America in 1918. His family hailed from Bari on the Adriatic coast. Many Annises still live there. Some even operate a successful grocery store in the city. His wife, my great-grandmother, grew up under the shadow of Mount Vesuvius in the ancient city of Naples. Annis brought with him a piercing intelligence and a powerful work ethic. The Italy he left behind, however, did not offer a fertile field for success. In the time of the Roman Republic and Empire, the coastal cities of the region produced wealth and served as some of the great urban jewels of the Mediterranean.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?